Picture this. I'm just standing there in my driveway on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind where the sun's barely peeking over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed grass, sipping my black coffee that's gone lukewarm, trying to shake off the fog of another sleepless night haunted by memories that refuse to fade, when suddenly the growl of police cruisers shatters the suburban silence like a thunderclap, two of them pulling up right in front of my house with tires screeching slightly on the pavement, their lights flashing blue and red across the neatly trimmed lawns and picket fences of Oak Ridge Meadows, bouncing off the windows of neighboring homes where curtains twitch with curious eyes. And there she is, Susan Blackwell, our self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, bouncing on her toes like a kid at Christmas, but with malice in her glare, jabbing her finger at me with those sharp, polished nails that catch the light, screaming at the officers to haul me away for daring to defy her iron-fisted rule over our little slice of suburbia, her voice echoing down the street, drawing more onlookers. You see, Susan had been gunning for me ever since I built that simple backyard fence, the one that checked every box in the Homeowners Association bylaws down to the exact wood type and stain color. But to her, it was an act of war, a blatant rebellion against her vision of perfect conformity where every yard mirrored the next in sterile precision. And now here we were, her latest escalation playing out in real time. The exhaust from the cop cars mixing with the bitter steam from my mug and the faint scent of blooming lilacs from Emily's old garden bed, making my stomach twist as I wondered how far this petty tyrant would go to crush anyone who wouldn't bow down. Her words tumbling out in a frantic rush about community destruction and illegal structures. But little did she know, the officer stepping out, broad-shouldered and authoritative with a radio crackling at his hip, was about to turn her world upside down. Because that man, with his badge gleaming under the morning light and his posture straight from years of training, was my son, Ethan, and as he locked eyes with me, a faint grin cracking his professional facade amid the tension, I felt a surge of pride cutting through the anger, knowing this was the moment her house of cards started crumbling, the air thick with anticipation as neighbors whispered from their porches. Let me take you back, rewind the tape a bit further, because this nightmare didn't start with sirens and accusations. It began with loss, deep, gut-wrenching loss that left me hollow and adrift. My name's David Ramirez, and for 28 years I'd wired buildings as a union electrician, the kind of job that teaches you patience and precision amid buzzing circuits and tight deadlines. Raising 3 kids who somehow turned out better than I deserved despite the long hours and calloused hands, with a wife, Emily, whose laughter could light up the darkest rooms and whose gentle touch could soothe any storm. But we bought our modest ranch in Oak Ridge Meadows 8 years ago, her dream of a safe haven where the streets were quiet, the parks manicured with swings creaking softly in the breeze, and life felt predictable and secure. Until last spring when cancer stole her away so swiftly it felt like a cruel joke from fate. The diagnosis coming like a bolt from the blue, treatments blurring into endless hospital visits at the downtown clinic where machines beeped incessantly, leaving me alone in this echo-filled house with our old golden retriever Max, who still paws at the door every dusk, waiting for footsteps that will never come, his sad eyes mirroring the ache in my chest that no amount of time seems to heal. The silence deafening, without her humming in the kitchen. The kids rallied around me in those raw months. Ethan at 29, a detective with the county sheriff's office, inheriting my stubbornness and Emily's fierce sense of right and wrong that drove him to late-night stakeouts and courtroom testimonies. Sophia, the 26-year-old nurse working long shifts at the city hospital, sharp as a tack and always one step ahead with her quick diagnoses and compassionate care. And Lucas, the youngest at 22, buried in engineering textbooks on a full-ride scholarship, sketching designs late into the night. They all pushed for me to sell, to start fresh nearer to them in a smaller condo perhaps. But how could I, when every corner whispered of Emily, her vanilla candles still scenting the closets with faint sweetness, her garden tools gathering dust in the shed alongside half-finished planting plans. So I stayed, clinging to the ghosts that brought both comfort and pain, thinking the HOA was just a minor annoyance. $1,200 annually for tidy commons and unused amenities like the clubhouse with its dusty ping-pong table, rules straightforward like no junk in yards or wild paint jobs. The basics that keep things civil without stepping on toes. Or so I believed until the cracks showed. But then Susan Blackwell decided I was her new project. She'd reigned as HOA president for 6 unchallenged years, 48 and married to Harold, a slick real estate attorney driving a silver Mercedes with plates screaming entitlement. Their sprawling Tudor home a perpetual construction zone, with hammers echoing and sawdust drifting. But Susan's true gift wasn't remodeling. It was wielding power like a weapon, cloaked in smiles and standards that masked her control-freak tendencies, starting subtle. Patrolling in her luxury SUV at odd hours, ruler in hand to measure blades of grass with obsessive accuracy, stopwatch timing sprinklers for imaginary quotas that shifted with her moods, camera snapping at bins an inch out of place, or decorations lingering past arbitrary deadlines she decreed on whims, her presence a constant hum of judgment that made you second-guess every curb appeal choice. From flower bed arrangements to mailbox styles, turning what should be home into a pressure cooker. The spark that ignited it all was last fall, when I put up a basic 3-foot pine fence around the yard so Max could roam safely without me hovering every second, sniffing the air freely. I'd pored over the guidelines for hours under lamplight, got bids from local contractors who assured compliance, permits stamped at City Hall after waiting in line, inspections passing with flying colors. Everything airtight and documented in a folder I kept handy. But the day after installation, there she was, heels clicking up my path with determined strides, tape measure extended like a sword, declaring it an affront to the neighborhood's visual unity that she alone defined, waving forms like decrees from on high, ignoring the clause allowing such heights without approval as if it were optional, her eyes narrowing to slits as I quoted the section back verbatim, snarling about board discretion, which meant her whims unchecked by any real oversight, threatening $400 daily fines or forced removal. With liens on my property, even plotting retroactive rule changes at a sham meeting where she was the sole voice, dictating minutes herself. And from then on, that fence became her fixation, daily inspections at dawn when the world was still foggy, photos from every angle with her phone flashing, measurements hoping for magical growth into noncompliance, all while I swallowed the rage bubbling inside, thinking of Emily's plea for peace in her final days, but feeling the injustice burn like faulty wiring ready to spark a full blaze, the wood's fresh scent a reminder of my small stand. As winter crept in with biting winds, I hoped the chill would cool her vendetta, perhaps distract her with holiday preparations. But no, the holidays brought fresh ammunition. I'd hung modest strings of soft white lights along the eaves, a quiet nod to Emily's traditions that made the house feel less empty and cold, each bulb a tiny beacon against the long nights. When Susan appeared mid-setup, clipboard poised aggressively, deeming them wasteful and excessive, citing phantom energy policies that existed nowhere in our docs, but in her fertile imagination, slapping a pre-written citation for $150 daily post-deadline, signed by Harold like some official seal of approval, her hypocrisy glaring as her own home blazed like a theme park with thousands of multicolored bulbs pulsing to music, animations whirring, while neighbors' extravaganzas escaped unscathed, their inflatables bobbing untouched. So I dug in deeper, verifying city codes allowed it all without restriction, uncovering Harold's license limited to commercial deals, no HOA expertise to back his bluster. And in a flash of defiance born from grief-fueled resolve, I rallied a dozen households via text, syncing our displays in a glowing act of solidarity that lit the streets like a festive uprising, hot cocoa shared from thermoses on porches, laughter echoing against the frost, Susan's car screeching by in futile fury, unable to ticket us all without exposing her bias or finding her own over-the-top spectacle that drained more power than the block combined. Her retaliation was swift and calculated, a bogus fire hazard report to code enforcement detailing imagined wiring dangers. But the inspector, Mike Hernandez, an old job site pal from union days with calluses to match mine, eyed my pro wiring with GFCI outlets and proper loads, and chuckled at the waste of his time, confiding she'd bombarded his office with similar nonsense against me and others, revealing her abuse of public services in a pattern that crossed from petty to perilous, potentially criminal. And as more homes joined the light show with twinkling additions, her drives-by grew frantic, face contorted in defeat behind tinted windows. Yet I sensed this was merely intermission, her obsession simmering beneath the surface, ready to boil over into something darker, more destructive. As the snow fell heavier and the injustice piled up like drifts against my door, testing my resolve like never before. The holiday's joy tainted by her shadow. Come January, the freeze deepened everything, the air crisp and unforgiving like a blade, mirroring Susan's unrelenting campaign that refused to thaw, which morphed into a so-called pet oversight group led by her and Eleanor Finch, a nosy retiree obsessed with curb timings and peering through blinds, zeroing in on Max, my gentle old boy whose fiercest act was fetching the paper under my watchful eye or rolling over for belly rubs from kids. But her citation accused him of unleashed menace and aggressive wandering, demanding fines and evaluations totaling $700 for behavioral assessments by her chosen experts, referencing invented leash mandates that vanished under scrutiny like smoke, her breath fogging the cold as she delivered it personally with a smug grin, expecting capitulation and perhaps even tears, but I flipped the script with calm defiance, pulling out my phone to record the exchange, watching her flush crimson and flee down the icy path, her heels slipping comically, then wiring up cameras around my property with union-grade precision, capturing her trespasses in high def, her own tabby Fluffy roaming unchecked through gardens and under cars, violating her own edicts in crystal-clear footage that smelled like sweet vindication mixed with the winter's sharp pine. Harold fired back with a laughable cease and desist on the cams, claiming privacy breaches and neighborhood standards violations in legalese that rang hollow. But my union lawyer shredded it over a quick call, revealing Harold's firm skimmed cuts from every fine collected, turning harassment into a profitable racket that explained her zeal. So I hosted a dog owners gathering in the park under bare branches. 15 leashed pups frolicking in the snow as we swapped tales of her selective tyranny. Over steaming mugs, the Parkers pup dinged for storm barks that echoed harmlessly. The Wilson senior hound for friendly wags interpreted as threats. And when Susan reported Max to animal control as hazardous with exaggerated claims of bites and chases, their probe cleared us thoroughly, flipping complaints onto Fluffy's antics like digging up bulbs and scaring birds, her pet ploy imploding as February's audits showed no threats, just a bully exposed in official reports that stacked against her. Yet she pivoted to finances in March, as mud thawed underfoot and lawns revived in patchy green, mandating lavish yard upgrades by spring's end or $100 daily hits that could bankrupt a family, pushing exotic plants and pricey setups from her vetted firms with glossy brochures promising paradise, costing thousands per household, her own yard exempt with its manicured perfection hiding violations, reeking of grafts and backroom deals. But I countered with native designs researched late nights, eco-friendly and rebate-eligible from city programs promoting sustainability, rallying 8 families for bulk buys with Tom Garcia's nursery discounts on hardy perennials and grasses, transforming mandates into communal gardens buzzing with shared shovels and tips, until Susan stormed my door with Harold and a compliance stooge in tow, rejecting it all for lacking traditional charm that matched her tastes, her eyes desperate and wild as I spotted her list's invasive species clashing with city eco-rules on water usage and biodiversity. So I tipped off water officials anonymously with scan docs, landing her a municipal slap for her wasteful sprinklers running at odd hours, irony thick as the spring air heavy with pollen, her hypocrisy laid bare in official notices taped to her own door. April brought revelation through Sophia's offhand chat about hospital transparency during a family dinner of her homemade lasagna, sparking my dive into HOA mandates for open books and audits, demanding years of records that Susan stonewalled with bogus privileges and frantic calls, until legal pressure from my attorney's stern letter forced delivery in a bulging envelope, unveiling deficits ballooning monthly, lapsed insurance leaving us exposed to lawsuits, and padded contracts to Harold's kin for phantom work like ghost landscaping and renovations that existed only on paper, fines propping their theft like a Ponzi scheme, my kitchen table a war room of damning proof spread under the pendant light, the inks sent fueling fury at their embezzlement that had siphoned thousands while she played enforcer with glee, and realizing exposure could jail them and strip their assets, I locked copies safe in a fireproof box, alerting the AG's fraud unit with a detailed packet, but sensing her peril from her increasingly erratic patrols, I knew desperation would unleash chaos, perhaps even danger. We convened in my yard as spring bloomed, the Oak Ridge resistance swelling to 14 around the patio, with folding chairs creaking, coffee steaming as I unveiled the fraud line by line. Helen Thompson, the accountant, dissecting numbers with her red pen flying. Rachel Vargas, the paralegal, plotting legal strikes with case law references, forging a multi-prong assault. Halt fine payments into a defense pot that grew quickly. Audit for AG filing with appendices of evidence. Petition elections sheet. Dodge for years in violation of bylaws. Demand insurance fixes or face class actions. All documented meticulously with timestamps and signatures. Rotating meets at different homes to evade her spying. Encrypted chats buzzing with shared evidence like violation scans and audio clips. Patience our weapon against her sloppiness born of arrogance. The grass clippings aroma blending with resolve and a hint of barbecue from a neighbor's grill, turning victims into victors united by shared outrage. Yet I braced for her backlash, a cornered beast's fury that could lash out unpredictably. May amplified her unraveling like a pot boiling over, social posts painting me as a radical saboteur with doctored images and wild claims, false threats reported to police disproven by cams showing my mundane routines, calls to my old union alleging syndicates that drew hearty laughs from reps who knew me well, daily code complaints wasting resources until Mike warned of her 17 baseless filings in a month, each one a drain on taxpayers. Then the PI hired to dig dirt on my finances and family. But Sam Donovan, ex-cop with a code of honor, tipped Ethan off directly, exposing Susan's decade-long pattern across towns with similar victims' testimonies, harassment escalating to surveillance when resisted, her public antics, dawn trash pics with flashlights, hose measurements in the rain, guest plate logs scribbled hastily, telegraphing breakdown and isolation, my gut twisting at the danger to family. Union lessons screaming scorched earth ahead as her moves grew sloppier. June peaked her madness under sweltering sun, announcing a clubhouse summit to oust me entirely, canvassing with wild conspiracies that alienated more than allied. Her knocks frantic and speeches rambling about extremist plots, arriving with charts and accusations blown up on posters. But we countered with 47 attendees filling the room, our audit bound in folders, harassment logs chronological and annotated. A tipped reporter capturing it all with notebook flying and camera ready. Rachel. Recording openly, Helen dismantling finances aloud with projections showing bankruptcy's edge, neighbors piling on stories of their own torments, until Susan dialed 911 mid-meltdown, fabricating riots with voice cracking, sirens wailing as tension crested like a wave, her final overreach in witness-packed glory, the air electric with impending reckoning. The cruiser's rumble built like thunder rolling in, officers bursting in expecting mayhem, but finding calm discourse amid folding chairs and scattered papers. Susan ranting threats and demands with gestures flailing, until Ethan pivoted smoothly, greeting me as dad with that familiar warmth breaking through duty, her face crumbling in shock like glass shattering, mouth agape as reality hit, her hands trembling slightly, reviewing our dossier of fraud and false calls page by page, her 911 stunt. The capstone felony exposed live, cuffs clicking as he Mirandized her amid gasps and murmurs, leading her out past stunned neighbors who nodded in silent approval, justice poetic, swift, the engines fading like her power into the evening dusk. In the aftermath, charges stuck firmly, false reports, harassment, embezzlement landing her 6 months jail where reflection might finally dawn, probation strict, service hours cleaning parks she once patrolled, restitution draining their accounts, barred from boards indefinitely, herald suspended from practice, fined heavily by the bar, their home sold to newcomers oblivious to the storm. A young couple with twins bringing fresh energy, our new board with Helen presiding wisely, Rachel, handling funds transparently, hired ethical managers who communicated openly, refunded $23,000 in bogus fees with interest calculated fairly, apologies flowing in letters and at meetings where healing began. A Unity grill out mended bonds under string lights, stories shared over burgers sizzling and salads crisp, Max free at last to wander tails wagging. Tom's seedlings blooming community-wide in vibrant colors, tool shares and libraries replacing fear with cooperation, the neighborhood pulsing with life again. Healing deepened as Helen and I found quiet romance blooming slowly, her strength echoing Emily's in shared walks and conversations, establishing the Emily Ramirez Memorial Fund from savings recouped, aiding scholars with grants and mentorship. I taught trades at schools, hands-on demos sparking young eyes. Ethan led safety days with demos and Q&As. No more abuses, just genuine ties forged in adversity. Settlements recovered $125,000 from the management's insurance, exposing broader scams that helped hundreds. But the true win was freedom, laughter replacing heels clicks, a neighborhood reborn through unity against corruption, the by-tragedy of loss fueling my stand against injustice, family love armoring me like a shield, righteous pushback toppling tyrants, proving ordinary folks' triumph when organized, documented, unbowed, turning Emily's dream into reality forged in fire, the house. Feeling warmer, Max's barks happier, life moving forward with scars but stronger. But tell me, in the face of such unchecked power, was it right to fight back so relentlessly, or does mercy have a place even for the corrupt? Where do you draw the line between justice and vengeance? And how far would you go to protect your home and loved ones from a bully hiding behind rules?